Hi there, and welcome to another live. We're going to have on stage the UK's top nutritionist, as seen on TV. It's the Keto-pro, Richard Smith. Good evening, Richard.
Good evening.
Oh, wow,
How are you
nice
doing?
and loud, nice and loud today. Wow.
Nice and close.
Have you been shouting?
No, the mic I think was a little bit too close, but
Oh,
all
no,
good.
right. Okay. I didn't know if
Just
you've been.
making sure everyone can hear me. That's all.
Yeah, well, you've got lots to say. You've had a video that's gone to 100,000 views this week, which is pretty good.
Yes, my first 100k video. I think it's now around 111, but who's counting?
Well, I think you are. I definitely am keeping tabs on it. So for anyone that hasn't seen it, make sure after this, by the way, after this, you zip over to Richard's channel, make sure you subscribe, and also check that video out because it's pretty good. It's exciting when you get into the 100,000s, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, as we've mentioned a few times previously, a lot of my content is hidden. It doesn't show up in a lot of searches, as is a lot of your content. One of the videos that we did recently in regards to carnivore and vegan, the views that video was receiving initially was in the hundreds, and then it just dropped off a cliff. A video that I released this week, which I think you've seen in regards to blue zones, took off incredibly well for me, at least, and now just dropped off a cliff. So I don't really know what to do to combat these things, other than maybe to remove specific words from the title. But yeah, it's not right.
No, it's not right. They're hiding information they don't want you to see. One of the things I would say, Richard, is I think you might be on your laptop microphone rather than your posh microphone. Just a thought there. But anyway, yeah, down the bottom of StreamYard in settings, because you normally sound a bit more dulcet and a bit more like Tom Jones, you know. But anyway, if you think that is the case, if you think that things are being hidden, well, you proved it, didn't you, with that other video, which you edited and took some bits out you thought might be having a bit of an influence. And you went from, I don't know what it was, like maybe 1,000 views up to about 60,000 views or something.
Yeah, that video, I think, had around 1,000 to 2,000. Is that better now?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, much better. Yeah.
I think that video, yeah, it was somewhere between 1,000 to 2,000 within 2 years. So incredibly low, but still that was good for me at the time. And now, as you say, I mean, 4 or 5 weeks down the line, 111,000 views, just because I removed specific keywords.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least I believe.
Well, I think the proof of the pudding is that is dramatically different. And you took out keywords, which we won't say here because those keywords are the words that show up in the algorithm. If you think this is really us being sort of a bit conspiracy theory, tinfoil hat and all that, the speed in which YouTube can log what you've said, they do a transcript in about literally 2 minutes after this live stream is finished, and every single word is logged. Now, the plus side is when you search, let's say we were talking about psoriasis, okay, or arthritis or something, and we mention it 100 times in a 60-minute broadcast. That's great for people that are searching for that. See, so that's why they do it. But also, there are certain words you can say which will get flagged up. So, for instance, at 8 p.m. in the UK, when we do half an hour extra after this hour, we can't say a certain word. We have to say it rhymes with apple crumble. But there you go. It really is that ridiculous with some of the information. So BitChute, Jackie's saying consider BitChute. BitChute is in the pocket of YouTube in a way, a little bit. But anyway, so is Odyssey. There's a few things behind the scenes that you wouldn't believe. So we use Apple Crumble for the things where the truth goes out. And I'm sure you know what platform that is. We haven't got any questions at the moment, but I think it's been interesting because I did a video and there was a lot of comments about the fact that protein doesn't turn into glucose. We proved that. I proved that about, I think, one Sunday when you wasn't here. I put the facts and figures up. But there's still so many people that just don't believe the facts, and we did a short about steak does not become cake. So why do you think people just don't want to believe?
I think it's the volume of information for the opposite. I think that there is a push towards making people unwell. Hence the reason specific videos may get blocked. And maybe this is a talk for the next channel. But if you were to go onto YouTube and search for keto or carnivore, most of the videos that come up would probably be videos that are saying how dangerous these things are over highlighting the benefits.
Yes.
So I believe that the masses are. I'll give you an example. There's a good friend of mine, Mikey, do a lot of training. We did a 3-hour indoor cycle today, by the way, which was brutal. The furthest I've ever gone indoors 2 hour, and my bum is killing. Anyway, brutal ride. A guy that he knows keeps sending him, these, and this guy's obviously got, everyone's best interest at heart. He's saying the red meat is bad for you when it causes insulin resistance and it leads to all of these things. And you can tell that he's passionate about this and he believes wholeheartedly what he says, because the information that he has read, the information that is available to him, has led him to that conclusion. But it's just completely false. I mean, I don't even understand in what realm that you could ever believe that red meat causes insulin resistance. I just don't understand what mechanism.
Yeah, there is no mechanism. No.
What mechanism are people believe? But this is how powerful this information is. Red meat is the most nutrient-dense food on the planet. It's the only source of food that is shown in 2 trials that I have found to increase telomere length, which is directly correlated with longevity. It contains every vitamin and mineral that we need, not just to survive, but thrive. Contains every amino acid. It contains every compound we need. Every cell in the body is made of protein. Every cell in the body is made of fat. There's not one cell in the body that's made of glucose. Yes, we have sites on the cell that glycoproteins dock to in order to create specific reactions, but no cell is made of glucose. So in what planet or process of thinking we don't need glucose? The body makes glucose, as you alluded to earlier, but it just baffles me. And I think this is the reason. We are bombarded from birth with this false information. And it gets me down. It really gets me down. We do these lives weekly. We do a live in our private group also. We spoke at the event last Sunday, the War on Health event. And much of this time is done for free. We are not ever going to be rich by telling people to live this way. We're not. If you want to be successful in life in regards to being financially wealthy, do not come in to the keto carnivore space, because you are not ever going to make millions of pounds, I can assure you. And we mentioned this, I think, when we were talking last week. If I was to tell people that living this lifestyle is beneficial if you cycle it, i.e., if I was to say that being ketogenic or living a carnivore lifestyle is beneficial as a washout period, maybe something to cycle every couple of months and then go back onto consuming carbohydrate, my business would, and I genuinely believe this, my business would double overnight, because that is a far easier sell. I could sell way more product. I could sell way more consultations, because people would believe that. But I cannot do that because it's untrue. It is completely untrue. And I genuinely believe that wholeheartedly. I believe in the lifestyle we live, and I believe wholeheartedly in the information we give out. But unfortunately, brick walls. There's brick walls everywhere and lots of misinformation.
Yeah, and I agree. And even on my personal training side of things, if I went to high carb and doing insane amounts of cardio, I would sell probably 20 to 30 more programs every single month, and I would not believe that I was doing the right thing for anybody except myself. So that's why I don't do that. So I do workout programs. There's even workout programs on the app. They're incredibly inexpensive. I mean, £2.99 a month compared to many online, which are like $90. So anyway, I think don't get too disheartened. I mean, you talked about the blue zones, for instance, which is a pile of rubbish. I have clients that live in the blue zones and they all eat meat, or they have pork. And if you go into Okawana's website, the tourist information will tell you that come to our restaurants and taste our local pork, which is the cuisine of this island. It's not plants. And the other thing is, healthy user bias. This is one of the things that I've been looking at. I've got a couple of studies where they were looking at a particular medication compared to placebo, and the stats were very similar for who did well and who didn't between the two. And actually what the study revealed, and this is what I thought was great, that the researchers actually were critically thinking about it wasn't the medication or the placebo, it was if they adhered to it. So the ones that did the best were the ones that they didn't know, by the way, that they were either on the medication or placebo. They were just told that, this is going to be good for you, take it. So the ones that took it, whether it was placebo or medication, did about 20% better than the ones that were shoddy in their regime. Now, it's not the medication or the placebo, it's the type of person that's been revealed there. The people that adhere to it, who care about their health, will do other things. And I can assure you, the medication and the placebo were pretty much the same percentages. So a dishonest researcher might take the worst from the placebo and the best from the medication group, but they actually wanted to know, which is really rare in this sort of realm. And I will bring this study to a video later, maybe next week. Rich and I will talk about it, actually, because it's really fascinating. So what the researcher did was actually go public on adherence to a regime was the thing that worked. So even though it was placebo and it did nothing, it did absolutely nothing, they had better results than the people on the medication. So I don't think the research funding people would be particularly happy, but it's really good bit of science. And that's a real great definition of healthy user bias. If you're interested in your health and you will do whatever it is to make your health better. So let's say you go vegan from a standard diet. The chances are, and this is where the blue zones comes into it, chances are you're going to get out more, you're going to socialize more, be in the sunlight more, maybe be more active, and all the things that really help you to be healthy and fit and vital. And if you look at the blue zones, by the way, they're all lovely places to live. I mean, I live in Derby, which is grey and rainy. I don't think I will be as happy and as positive as if I lived in a blue zone, eating exactly the same way. So the environment is really big. The community is really big. The fact I don't smoke very much, I don't drink, all these things make the blue zones, a better place to live than many other places. And yet it's been debunked. I mean, you did the brilliant podcast and I do recommend people watch it. But it's been debunked not just by Richard, but by many, many people over many years. And also, like I say, you can do a rudimentary search of those areas and you can go onto the tourist information on the websites and you can see the restaurants and you can see they eat pork, they eat beef, they eat fish. So it's easy to disprove. And it's very, sorry, I'm nearly ranting now, but, people don't want to hear it. They just don't want to hear it. And that's what it is. They don't want their comfortable belief that they're doing good for the planet. They're saving animals because they're not eating animals. They just want to sit in that cozy sort of smugness, even though it's completely irrelevant. And it's actually called a fabricated irrational belief, a fib. That's actually what it is, a fabricated irrational belief. And believe it or not, the more intelligent you are, the more likely you are going to stick to a position. You are not open-minded if you are intelligent in the way that the mainstream does the quota for intelligence. So if you believe something, you're going to stick to that no matter what, and you're going to find every single reason to not believe the reverse. Now, if you're a carnivore, you're a different sort of person. Going back to that sort of medication and placebo thing, you cannot be carnivore and not be open-minded. By the very definition, the fact you've arrived here proves you are open-minded, because you're trying something that most people tell you is not good for you. But you're looking at facts, you're looking at real success stories, you're actually looking at data, doing your own research. And by the way, when people knock that and say, you're doing your own research, why don't you trust the scientists? Well, that's what the scientists do. Research, the word is they search and then they research it. They search it again and they search it again and they search it again. That's all you're doing. You're doing that. So you're doing what they do. But actually, you're not doing the confirmation bias. You're looking into it and you're questioning. I mean, the amount of questions that we don't get 100 comments going, that's a great video, brilliant, that's fantastic. We get enough of those, but we also get, well, hang on a minute, you mentioned such and such. What about this? What about that? And people query, not because they are saying what we're saying is rubbish. They want to learn. You know, if Richard says, when you're trying to detox oxalates, calcium may not be the best thing to include because of this, this, and this. Yeah, we got a lot of pushback on that. But everybody that pushed back wanted to know why Richard said it, not to go, oh, that's rubbish. So anyway, we're both ranting a little bit. Sorry about that. Should we have a question? Should we have a look?
Nothing wrong with the rant. I've just looking at the back to the beginning of the comments now. Before we came on live, there's already 2 questions in there, Steve. I think they've been addressed to you. I don't know if you can see them in the comments.
What do they say?
It looks like the second part of a first thing. So Fit, some mum has said he has been strict carnivore for 14 months, has fasted for many hours, but his blood sugar is very high, 250 or more. That's obviously American terms in regards to was it milligrams per deciliter. My question is, can you see these?
No, what time was it?
This was 8:13 a.m. So I'm guessing.
Okay, all right. Let me have a look, because I think the messages are a little bit out of sync, because I think there's some before that. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. I can't see that. Can you read it to me?
Yes. So it goes on to say that it's high due to medication. My question is, where does this sugar come from? So it's to do with high blood glucose levels, to do with medication. Well, unfortunately, that's what medication does, isn't it? Quite often, it damages the liver's ability to create insulin, therefore leading to an increased level of blood glucose. Plus, an increased level of cortisol can also do this. When cortisol is elevated, it'll signal the release of stored glycogen in order to balance blood pressure and other things. So it's, yeah, I mean, the question would be what medication, and we can't give medical advice in regards to medication, but what medication is this person on? And is there any chance that maybe in the foreseeable future they could come off it? Because I'm not against medication. Many people think that I'm against medication. I used to take so many different medications. I am now medication free. If it wasn't for medication in my life, I would be dead without question. So there is a place for medication. But in my opinion, medication, in very few cases at least, should be taken long term, at least daily. Medication is there to address an issue incredibly quickly, and then you recover from it and you come away from medication. But this is what medication does, unfortunately. It leads to insulin resistance. It damages the liver, can damage the kidneys also. So that would be my question, at least, is what medication, why, and would there be any opportunity maybe potentially to reduce or come off? I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, Steve. Can you still not see the question?
No, I can't see the question, which is very frustrating. But we will come back to it if it shows up on my feed, but I think you've covered it. I mean, the thing is, blood glucose doesn't have to come from dietary carbohydrate. I mean, it really is that simple. The liver makes it. The liver makes it when you fast. Otherwise, you would die. I mean, it really is that simple. And I don't mean to be patronizing. You need approximately 5 grams of carbohydrate every hour,
Yeah.
or 120 grams over 24 hours. That's it. That's roughly it, which is roughly a teaspoon in 5 liters of blood. That's what you need. And that's what your body demands. And that's what your body makes, which is why it's called demand driven. That's why gluconeogenesis, new making of glucose, is brilliant when you don't ingest it, because you're doing exactly what your body needs. That's it. Simple as that.
There is another one there also, which obviously you haven't seen. This came through at 11:18 a.m. So another one, and it is addressed specifically to you. Would you like me to read that one out?
Is it from Tom J?
No, it's from Sean E.
All right, let's do Tom J, because Tom J is at 7:09, and we'll work out what's going on, guys. It is a live question and answer, but thank you for addressing it, and also we've got a super chat which we will thank you for. Right, Stephen, you mentioned B12 can be depleted after 3 years if not replenished. I thought all water soluble vitamins don't get stored in the body. Can you explain? Yes, it gets stored in the liver. The liver is amazing, what we just said. So we're going to use this as a great example. 3 years it can be in the liver. And what happens is, when you have B12, B12 ends up in many places, like bile, for instance, and all over the body, and in tissue. And what happens? Reabsorption of bile, as bile goes through the liver. Your liver will protect the B12, and it will just constantly be stored. The two things it's stored as are very long terms. I'm not going to get into it because I always mispronounce it. But anyway, so it's a sort of recycling mechanism, and there's a lot of reabsorption and rerouting to make sure that you've got some B12, because it's that important for red blood cells, for instance. So after 3 years of not eating it, your body starts to, vegans obviously, or vegetarians, people not eating anything that's got vitamin B12, start to be depleted of it. And that's the facts. So there you go. That's how it works. You are right. Water soluble vitamins are harder to store than fat soluble, but the body, you have to factor in how amazing the body is at trying to keep you alive. So that's that one. Let me go to that. Basically, being with Cosmos Live has just gave a £10 donation, so that's fantastic. We have another question here. We will get to that one that addresses me. Why do doctors in Germany say we should eat meat maximum once per week, as it is bad for our hearts? Because they're misguided, as we've just said. They are following a standard duty of care. That's what it's called. Yes, and carnivore muscle, by the way, you've just backed up what I was saying about B12 stored partly in the muscles. I don't want to get into into the weeds too much. Let's have a look at this. Right, Saved by Carnivore. Too much protein without fat will jack up your glucose. That's been proven wrong time and time again. You do need protein with fats if you want the full absorption of amino acids, but that when you label the amino acids, and this has been done in studies, and I did this a couple of weeks ago, you can trace the amino acids from what you've eaten all the way through your body, and you can see whether what you've eaten goes into your blood glucose, and it doesn't do it. Just really is that simple.
Yeah, I think the miscommunications or the misunderstanding comes from diets rich in carbohydrate. So it's the insulin to glucagon ratio that allows us to maintain a ketogenic state, which we are indeed, even when we are living a carnivore lifestyle. When we over ingest or consume, I don't want to say too much because there's no such thing, but when we consume more protein on a high carb diet, this insulin to glucagon ratio is changed by as much as 2,000%. Which, if that translated into a ketogenic lifestyle, that would indeed be enough to be a concern. But when we look at what happens in a ketogenic or carnivore lifestyle, that ratio remains unchanged, at least as a whole number. As a percentage, it changes around 5 to 6%, which is not enough to pull one from a ketogenic state. Excess protein will not elevate your blood glucose to the point that it will pull you from a ketogenic state. all I eat is meat. I quite often, all I eat on some days when I am prepping for a competition would be lean proteins. My blood glucose does not increase significantly. It may increase ever so slightly. My ketones may drop ever so slightly, but my ketones are also almost non-existent. And the reason for this is the blood the body becomes adapted. So initially when we begin a ketogenic journey, the body will create acetoacetate, acetone, and beta hydroxybutyrate. Acetone and acetoacetate. Acetoacetate is interchangeable, by the way, also, but many of these are wasted through the urine and the breath. And this is what we pick up on the breath monitor and the urine strips. And beta hydroxybutyrate would typically be done through the blood. But as we adapt, the body doesn't waste as many of these ketones. It utilizes them more as beta hydroxybutyrate. So then the blood testing comes more in handy. And then over time, the body becomes even so efficient at utilizing beta hydroxybutyrate that even blood levels of ketones are reduced. Despite not consuming any sugar, the body is thriving on ketones, but the amount in circulation is lower because the body upregulates the monocarboxylate transporters and specific enzymes within the cell, BDH, ACAT, and SCOT, and it becomes way more efficient, and we utilize things at a much higher level. Let's take a look at this stuff. Fantastic.
Yeah, you see, this is the study. Blood. Now, what the researchers thought was that about 50% of your protein is going to become glucose. Right? That's how ignorant people are about this. They just make these stupid remarks and say that's scientifically the truth, and it isn't, because this is blood sugar with 53 grams of glucose. All right, so that's line number one. That's what happened. And then they looked at blood sugar after 100 grams of bread and 25 grams of butter, because that has 53 grams of glucose. All right. So, and that spiked it a little bit. But anyway, let's get to blood sugar after 485 grams of beef. So 485 grams of beef has 53 grams of glucose. So they were thinking, because 53 grams of glucose goes up here, if you had 485 grams of lean beef, it would also go up here. See, that's how stupid they were. They genuinely just thought it's going to be about the same. And you can see, number 4 is the beef. It did not go into the blood glucose at all. And this is time and time again, this has been done, time and time again. I can send you so many different studies. Then you've also got what's called glucose flux. Okay, this is where they label the amino acids, and they labeled the amino acids from eggs. And they gave it to lots of participants, and you end up with this average sort of graph, which looks at how much glucose was not from the eggs, which is all of this. This is the blood glucose over the minutes, and this is from the eggs. So there was a tiny little amount of amino acid ended up being converted to blood glucose. Tiny. It's not even 5%. And for most of the time, it was 0%. So you had this little blip. So that's it. I mean, there were just hundreds and hundreds of these things that when you actually study it, when you actually look at it and test it properly, doing things like labeling the amino acids, you can see it doesn't do it. It doesn't take much of a search to find that information out. So anyway, I'm not cross with anybody. It's just frustrating to say the same thing time and time again, as Carnivore Muscle will attest. So go and read your question out that is labeled to me. I think it maybe come from Twitter because it's not showing up in my comments.
Okay, so it says,
Can you share it on the screen? Can you share it on the screen at all?
I can't. I don't have access to share the question, so I will just read it out for you. Hi, Stephen. This is from Shawnee. I get breakouts of acne on my back. I eat mainly minced beef and eggs cooked in butter or lard. I drink water and coffee, and I've been doing this way of eating since March 23. Apologies, I'm not the best at reading and speaking. This is why you do the questions.
Right.
I've got something to put into this, but it's addressed to you.
Yeah.
So
well, go for it, Rich. Go for it, Rich.
Sure? So,
yeah.
I mean, look, all of those could be problematic. And I know that sounds like a cop-out answer, but I'll explain why. Minced beef can be higher in histamines, which can cause issues when it comes to spots. Aged meats. So if you are eating beef, try to get it not aged. Fresh is best. Beef can still, or it does still contain higher levels of histamine. So I'm guessing that Sean is based in the States, coming from the time that he's posted this. But if you have access to lamb, I would preference lamb over that because the histamine is a lot lower. That aside, beef is probably one of the least problematic proteins on the planet. And if it is that, then I would suggest that it's more to do with the fact that it may not be fresh. But moving on from that, we've got the butter and the lard. Both of those can cause issues. And the eggs can. So the eggs contain a protein called overmucoid, which is a trypsin inhibitor, and it blocks the body's ability to break down specific proteins, which can lead to acne. What else was there? There was eggs can increase progesterone, which can also increase acne. So look, there's loads of different mechanisms. So when I say that they can all cause issues, this isn't a cop-out. Lard, comes from pigs, so it depends on what they are fed. There could be compounds in there causing issues. My suggestion, Sean, would be remove the eggs, remove the coffee because of the acrylamide, remove the fats from cooking, cook your beef in its own fats for a couple of weeks. And I know this sounds incredibly boring, but we need to remove all of the potential offending compounds, but beef being the least offending one on there. Begin with beef, see if everything goes away, and then reintroduce things slowly one at a time and see if that has cured the problem. The issue with removing one may be that this problem could be caused by 2 or 3 of the compounds in there, and you're not going to know which one is causing it. And typically when we remove one compound, we consume more of other compounds, therefore further contributing to this effect. So I would preference to remove everything, just cook the beef in its own juices and go from there, introduce one by one. Zinc also, you could be lacking zinc. Yes, zinc is high in meats, but it could be an acidity issue within the gut. So you could, if that doesn't solve it, removing all the compounds and introducing one at a time, try supplementing with zinc for a little while. You have been eating this way for an awful long time, so I would have expected that these issues would have gone away. So there's obviously an issue there with something that you are consuming. So a complete elimination protocol is what I would suggest. But have you got anything to add, Steve?
Yeah, one of the things could be problematic. I agree with everything you said there, Rich, actually. But when you cook your ground beef, you could also not tip the fat that's left in the pan back onto it. The rendered fat could be causing a problem. It's actually called backne as well. Some people call it that sort of cheeky thing. If you've got acne on your back, it's backne. So you could look up that, by the way. There is some other things. You could be irritating hair follicles, and I know that sounds a bit picky, but if you're a runner, for instance, you get like runner's nipples, so you put plasters over your nipples because the fabric can ruin it. Exactly on the back, there could be something that, if you're doing something that you work in every day and you wear, I don't know, a particular t-shirt or a particular fabric, that could irritate if you've got a hairy back. That could be producing it. What will happen is you'll get excess sebum, which is when we were 8 at school and we learned about sebum, we all thought it was funny because it had bum in it. But so there's other things as well outside diet. It could be those sort of things as well.
It's funny you should mention sort of joggers, nipple and plasters, because I'm not going to take my shirt off, by the way, but I've got plasters on my nipples.
There you go.
For that very reason. So I've got very sensitive nipples when it comes to running, especially in the cold, but probably too much information.
Right, cool. So I think what it is because we're sort of going out to places like Facebook and Twitter, and no one's watching me on Facebook, but there's a couple of people on Twitter, maybe those messages aren't coming through. So if you spot one that I haven't seen, Rich, then do that. Let's go into this one about cholesterol. So oak hearts. I've just had my cholesterol test. My test has risen since starting carnivore. I've been doing it for 5 months. My HDL was 1.3. My LDL was 10.2. So the HDL ratio is 9.1.
What are your triglycerides?
Yeah, there you go. Really, oak hearts, you want your HDL to triglyceride ratio. And there is so much we can talk about when it comes to cholesterol. So yeah, let's get the full lipid panel, and then maybe we can talk about that. But I don't worry about high cholesterol, and I know a lot of people skirt around this, but it is a fact. The higher your cholesterol, the longer you will live. Now, when they talk about high cholesterol killing you, that's not true. That's not true. Right. All-cause mortality, that is the posh way of saying dying from anything. If you have higher cholesterol, you're less likely to die at an early age. It's really that simple. But what they do with these studies when they say, oh yeah, definitely high cholesterol is going to kill you, they narrow it down to things like cardiovascular disease of a particular type. When they can find something that you're not going to die of if you've got high cholesterol, if they can find one thing, they'll cling on to that. But all you got to do is look at studies and look up all-cause mortality, and you will see that people with low cholesterol die sooner, more often than those with medium cholesterol, and the ones that live the longest have high LDL, which isn't cholesterol, by the way. It's low-density lipoprotein, and the cholesterol in all of the lipid proteins is the same cholesterol, and it's the same cholesterol that goes through veins. It doesn't cause plaques, but there's a lot more to it. Right. Apologies for the graphic talk, but can we talk about a parasite cleanse? Do you believe parasites exist? Yes, parasites exist. I mean, mistletoe is a parasitic plant that grows on trees. Yes, there are parasites. But I've got some facts for you. Okay, so in 2007, 14th of February, more than 6,000 samples, which was 2,000 of pork, 2,000 of chicken, 2,000 of beef, were purchased from stores in 28 major US geographical areas. Each sample weighed a minimum of 2.2 pounds, for a total of more than 14,000 pounds of meat tested. None of the raw meat and chicken or pork samples contained parasites. None. And you know where that came from? That was the USDA government website. Right. Now, there is an organization that wants to find parasites. Well, my hat goes off to them for looking at 2,000 samples of each, pork, chicken, and beef, and actually having the balls to print that they did not find one parasite. Not one. Okay. And that was from 28 different geographical locations. So, boy, did they want to find parasites. So, do you agree parasites exist? Yes. Do I think they're a problem in this way of eating? No. As you will see on my website, I eat raw ground beef. Not a problem with just butter. And there are many people on Instagram that do that. I am not saying go out and do that. If you want to try it, that is your own thing. That's your own decision. But that's the facts. And I could send the link to that if you want. I will actually put that in the chat, and you can merrily look at those reports if you want to. So there you go. I'm going to put that in the chat. Maybe that will put people's mind at rest. But yes, anything to stop you eating meat, you will read about. Anything to make you eat meat, you won't. Not in the mainstream. Right, let's have another look. Luke says, hi guys, watching you guys weekly and absorbing everything has been so life-changing. Rich had mentioned he has some unflavored electrolytes coming out soon. Do we have any further ETA, estimated time of arrival, on these? Great question, Luke.
I do. They hit the deck tomorrow. So they arrive scheduled tomorrow. So as soon as they are in, they will be live and ready to go. They are just as good as the current electrolytes that we do, but they are devoid of stevia, which is stevia out of the sweeteners is one of the best ones that we can consume. But people like you and I, Steve, and the stricter carnivore community want to be completely devoid of as many of these compounds as we can. So we have formulated the completely unflavored electrolyte version for the carnivore community. So that hits the deck tomorrow. Woohoo! Can't wait.
Are you going to put a link in the chat?
I will indeed. Except, do you know, I will do it tomorrow because
actually you've got something to show. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
I cannot put the link yet because the product is not live. So that link does not exist. So I will post it as soon as they arrive into the comments on both channels tomorrow. How's that?
Excellent. Now, I noticed you wanted this.
So yeah, it just comes back to the comment that we had a few comments ago in regards to, I think it was a comment from Germany. So this is the Eat Lancet guidelines, and as you rightly say, this suggests that, and I'm going to read this out because this makes me laugh every time I read it. While meat is an important source of key nutrients, including protein, iron, and vitamin B12, fantastic. So the next part to that should be eat as much of it as you can. It proceeds to say excess meat consumption can harm our health, the planet. Aim to consume no more than 98 grams of red meat per week, which is 14 grams of red meat per day, which is absolutely ridiculous given the fact that it is one of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. I won't go into all the detail in regards to the environmental impacts because you can watch that on one of the videos that Stephen and I have done. But what I did want to show you is one of the impacts on health. So we're told that red meat causes cancer. And this came out in 2015 predominantly in regards to colon cancer. And it was carried out by the World Health Organization, the IARC report on cancer in 2015. And this is what the study yielded. So basically the title of the study would imply that red meat causes cancer, but the study didn't actually show this. And this is how detrimental that these studies that are published can be, because the study didn't actually show any correlation between red meat or any meat for that matter and cancer. 800 studies were put forward or were considered. 29 out of those 800 were put forward, of which only 14 were considered in the final report, all of which were observational epidemiology, so there's not one RCT in there. 8 out of these showed no link. So 8 out of the 14 out of the 800 showed no link. 2 studies were in there, which were they injected rats. So they had rodents, they fed them red meat, and they injected them with toxic chemicals like methane, which is a known carcinogen. So what they do in testing is they would inject this cancer-causing chemical to induce colon cancer, so they could, practice and experimental drugs and so on and so forth. So this is actually in the report. They injected these rodents with a cancer-causing chemical and fed them red meat. But the rats didn't develop cancer. Despite having this cancer-causing chemical, the rats still did not have cancer. You can't make this up. Only one of these studies actually showed any statistical significance, and this one was carried out by the Seventh-day Adventists of America, who are a religious group who advocate for a vegan-based lifestyle. And even within their report, these people who developed cancer were type 2 diabetic, clinically obese, and consumed processed foods, pizzas, for example, and cola and other soft drinks. Therefore, not one study out of these 800 actually showed any correlation. But because that title said that eating red meat did, this is what swept the nation, the world, in fact, and this is why we believe red meat causes cancer. But that study actually shows not one of those studies shows red meat causes cancer. And this is what we're up against. Another thing, and I'll show you this actually. So I did a podcast recently with the incredible Zoe Harcoom. Saturated fat is, a query for concern in regards to eating red meat. Saturated fat is not detrimental to your health anyway, but let's just pretend it is. For argument's sake, let's pretend it is. Zoe showed this, and it's based on her website, and I've kindly taken this from her website. So this is a piece of steak. So what makes up steak? 71% of its water, 21% is protein. Ash and minerals makes up 1%. The total fat content is 7%, of which only around 2% is actually saturated fat. So there's more non-saturated fat in the red meat than there is saturated fat. So even if saturated fat were a problem, it's not high in red meat anyway. And this is the type of information that we are up against constantly. Cancer and saturated fats. And saturated fats do not increase cholesterol, by the way. And cholesterol is not detrimental to your health. Mine also is double figures, and I wish mine were higher. As Stephen said, the higher your cholesterol, the lower your risk of death. And if that gentleman comes back with the triglycerides, which is the missing component to check that. Oh, fantastic. You're muted, Steve. Steve, you're still muted.
He has come back.
Brilliant.
Oak hearts. We'll do that.
Okay.
I'm going to share screen. I'm going to do 2 shares just very quickly because we're like that here. We're very generous with our time. And this is LDL studies, which I've sent out to many, many people. It's a document all about it. And we'll just scoot through it very quickly. If you have high cholesterol, it appears you are likely to live longer than those with low cholesterol. And the study association between low density lipoprotein, which isn't cholesterol, by the way, it contains cholesterol and other things, and all-cause mortality. All right, and basically that's what I was talking about. Everybody dies. All right, so when we look at this graph, that's why it starts at 1, because both Rich and I will die. Okay, and as Sean Baker says, even if he dies at 108 by a coconut being thrown at his head, it will still be carnivore that did it, right? So, which I think is quite funny. But anyway, right. So here we go. So the thick red line is sort of the instances. So we're not going to fall into the trap of talking about risk and cause and effect. This is what happened. This is what the researchers observed. Well, the people, when they died, what was their cholesterol like? What was their LDL like? Well, here's sort of like the midpoint where sort of the risk is 1 to 1, like everybody. We've all got this one chance of dying. But when you then compare to other people, so when you look at lower cholesterol, there was twice as many people dying with the lower cholesterol than up here. Even when the LDL was 300, it was hardly any more than just the average person. These dotted lines, for instance, are called confidence intervals, how confident they are in these figures. If they go like this, way below 1, there is even a chance that LDL cholesterol is protective, keeping these people alive, whereas as you can see on the other side, there's a chance it's probably not protective to have low cholesterol. So we're going to put what we said into perspective. By the way, anyone can email me and get all this sent to you if you want to. Having high HDL combined with low triglycerides is a much better predictor of longevity and reduced incidences of heart conditions than LDL levels. So it's better to look at cholesterol and in a proper way, where we look at your results. So let's take your results, Oak Hearts, and you have got triglycerides of 1.8, and the reference range is less than 1.7. So you're not far off. HDL wants to be above 1.1, and you're 1.3. So this is all looking very good. And here, apparently, they want you to have less than 3 LDL. By the way, that's calculated, so it's still an assumption. It's not a direct measurement. You're not getting fractions or particles or pattern A, pattern B looked at. So it's just a great big calculation. So we don't even know if 10.2 is even true. That's the first thing. But secondly, I can't actually advise you health-wise what your next decision is. But that's the information that you might need. All right, so we've shown you the studies and we've shown you where you stand in relation to the reference ranges. So triglycerides, HDL, are looking pretty good. If your triglycerides come down over the next 3 months, that'd be great. That's what I would look for. If it was me, that's what I would look for. And Richard has said, he wants his LDL to be higher. I'm the same here. We're absolutely the same. So, right. Can you see another question?
No, what I was going to add to that, Steve, is as you say, LDL is protective, heals and repairs the body. Mine is incredibly high. That ratio comes out as 1.38. Ideally, we want it below. The worst range we want is like 1.5. Ideally, we want it below 1. The closer to 0.5, the better. But it's still incredibly good. It just shows that there's possibly a change in regards to pattern A to from pattern B to pattern A. Pattern B is the glycated and oxidized LDL. Pattern A is the non-glycated, non-oxidized. And we want to see this transition. But those numbers are fine. The reason the cholesterol increases is when we remove toxic compounds like seed oils, the phytosterols. They compete for absorption, or they confuse. They look so similar to real cholesterol. The body doesn't produce any cholesterol any longer. But these compounds are detrimental. the body actively tries to remove these phytosterols, and it tries to keep that level to as low as possible, around 2%.
Can I interrupt just to bring it down to layman's terms? This is why people on plant-based diets see their LDL go down, because their body is using a plant sterol, a version of cholesterol that plants make. So I don't want to get it too fancy pants so people don't really understand. All right. So what Rich is saying is plant sterols, sterols, you see, animal-based or plant-based, they're very similar. This is why you can get people eating Oreo cookies and seeing the LDL go down, because the LDL reading is not measuring, and that's why, sorry, Rich, I just wanted to nail this, which is why I said it's not a measurement, it's still an estimation. This is why LDL, even the estimation goes down, because all the factors they use do not factor in plant sterols, because they don't, it's not registered. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. Carry on, my dear man.
Yeah, no, spot on. Look, it's we just need to change our whole way of thinking. LDL is every cell in the body is made of cholesterol. It's essential for cell formation, cell communication, nutrient absorption, nutrient transportation, the production of hormones. It's essential for healing. It's essential for life. We can't live without cholesterol. This is why when we become unwell, our body lowers cholesterol in order to create these compounds to defend the body. So we don't want low cholesterol. This is why the phytosterols, or when, as you rightly say, when we consume these compounds, we artificially lower our cholesterol. And when we come away from these toxic compounds, our cholesterol just returns back to its natural physiological level. For anybody who doesn't believe what we are saying, if you Google a condition called cytosterolemia, this is a genetic condition inherited in which that person is unable to detox phytosterols or plant sterols, and it leads to premature heart disease. So the compound that they are telling us to consume in order to reduce cardiovascular disease is there proven in black and white to increase risk of cardiovascular disease. We just need to change our whole way of thinking. We want high cholesterol, but we want and we want high LDL, but we want our LDL to be pattern A, non-oxidized, non-glycated, not pattern B. And what those results say to me, Steve, is that there is a transition going on at the moment in regards. That is a good profile, but it could be slightly better. And I think the transition currently is those cells, they're becoming less glycated, less oxidized, and they will predominantly become more pattern A. The triglycerides will drop, and that ratio will change for the better. I'm not concerned about double figures when it comes to LDL.
Excellent. Right. Lately, a few people claim that carnivore calls them gut dysbiosis. What do you think could cause that? Not carnivore. Now, I've never seen anybody get a gut that goes worse on carnivore. I've certainly seen hundreds, if not thousands, of people get improved gut health. What could cause it? Well, possibly going too much into carnivore too soon. So the stomach acid hasn't caught up. The production of stomach acid, the production of bile might not have caught up. If you've come from low fat, calorie restricted, you haven't got enough nutrients, you're not making enough bile. So I would think if anyone's having gut issues, and interestingly, I have just done the Alpha Diversity gut microbiome test, which I should have next week for you. And everyone that's carnivore that does this comes up with such a brilliant profile you wouldn't believe. I'm going to be really quick, Rich, because I want to get to the apple crumble link, and we've got a few questions. So Tom, I think you're regular. Maybe next week bring that back up, and we're at the beginning and we can talk about that. I wanted to get to this. Is cholesterol important to avoid dementia? Absolutely, definitely. Cholesterol is so important in the brain. Carl said, my daughter has been diagnosed with colitis. Will the carnivore diet help? We can't say yes one-to-one because it's not medical advice. All I can say is from my experience, yes. Everybody I've seen has had ulcerative colitis or any sort of colon issue. Carnivore has definitely helped. What about you, Rich?
Yeah, I agree. In simple terms, I think we've got 5 minutes left to wrap up. Carl is a big advocate of our lifestyle, and I think he knows the answer. Yes is the simple answer.
Okay, 2 more questions or 2 more things, and then we'll put the link out. Right, Emma, I have a question. How best to get off cholesterol meds? Is it better addressed on the Apple Crumble channel? Yes. Yes, definitely. So we'll get on that. And then Landers is saying, and I want to add one very quick thing before Rich sums up. Landers, I've read quite a few studies that don't hold water. After reading who has cited the studies paper, the same old adage comes to mind. It's nothing personal. It's only business. And I tell you, one of the funniest things is that Paul Saladino, defending his fructose consumption, quoted a study that was funded by a company that makes a fructose-laden soda called Coca-Cola. So that surprises me, not one bit. So you're absolutely right, Landers. And the final thing here, avocados and sardines, good for energy. I think that's a question. Sardines, yeah, maybe the fat in there is good for energy.
Yeah, avocado, I'm not against plants. They are lower on the toxicity scale for fats. The best type of fat you're going to get for energy is going to be something towards the short chain or the medium chain triglycerides. Sardines are high in EPA and DHA, which is fantastic for helping to prevent and fight things like dementia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. So keep in your omega-3s. Beef is also a very good source of omega-3, a lot lower, but we can get it from there. For energy production, I wouldn't preference EPA and DHA for energy. I would be consuming the long chain and the medium chain triglycerides, i.e. sort of saturated fats, animal fats, and MCTs, the medium chain triglycerides, i.e. the type of fat that you can get from meat, and more so from coconuts, if you are gravitating into the world of plants or foods.
Yes. There you go. So I've put the link into Apple Crumble for the next 30 minutes if you want to go over there. If you want your question answered, either arrive earlier, post it even before we start, which we had when we started, 2 questions already preloaded, and we covered those. You can use the super chat, which is always appreciated because it helps us pay the bills. If you like my hoodie, there's a link in the description to buy this hoodie, Carnivore Experience. And there's also a link to Apple Crumble in the description. Many people seem to not be able to find this link. It's in the chat now. And you can watch our next 30 minutes. It's now 7:58 in the UK, and we'd like to start over there at 8 o'clock. So I want to thank everybody on YouTube. I think there's a few people. Let me just check. I don't think I've got anybody on Facebook pop in, but we've got a few people on X, which is great. And you're the winner today of the most viewers on your channel. On Keto-pro, we had 45, and on my channel, 39. So there you go. And if I'm sounding a bit hoarse, it's because I'm a Liverpool supporter, and I was shouting at them before we came on air because they were playing so badly against Manchester United. So that's my goodbye to the YouTubers. See you on the other platform. Do you want to say anything, Rich, before we go?
Yeah, just like to thank everybody for tuning in. Always fantastic. I can see a couple of other questions there. Riffs by Chris has just put a question. If you pop over to the other channel, we can address that over there quickly also. But thank you all, as always. And Stephen, thank you. Always a pleasure chatting to you. And I will be chatting again with you shortly.
Yeah, in about 60 seconds. All right. Cheers, mate.
Thank you all.
I think I'm going to have to press end stream.